Okay, so yeah, once again, thank you all for joining in this webinar. So today we'll be discussing a very important topic, the domain of data engineering and analytics, which is building a robust data pipeline and some best practices that we can manage within the organization, how to build these pipelines. So as we know, like the technology and the information overload on data, it's evolving, and it's like over the period of time, it's like there's a humongous data that's been generated over the period of time, and underlying the heart of this process lies the art and science of this data pipeline. So yeah, let's proceed and let's discuss more about the best practices and data pipeline. So before that, let me introduce ourselves. So myself, Deepan, I'm a senior product manager here at DoubleCloud, and together with me is Andre.
Yeah, my name is Andrei. I'm an engineering lead. I'm responsible for transfer team and a transfer service, and therefore I have some experience of building as a toolkit for ETL pipelines, ALT pipelines, and other pipelines, and actually have some experience how to build a robust pipeline. So here to share my experience and knowledge with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Andre. And last but not least, yeah, DoubleCloud. DoubleCloud is an data platform which helps to build data platforms on using an open managed data stack. So yeah, we'll hear about more in DoubleCloud in the coming slide, but let's move on to our discussion. So yeah, data pipelines, if you talk in general about data pipelines, it's mostly around like ETL, ELT. So data pipeline serves as like a lifeline that connects all the raw and like disparate data sources from different sources. It could be like structured, unstructured, and ultimate aim is like to consolidate them, which helps organization in making some decisions on that specific data that's been collected, or build some dashboards on top of it, or like making some modifications using some transformation layer in between. So ultimately loading into like a storage or analytical system. But yeah, it sounds as powerful they are, but the journey of building the data pipelines is riddled with a lot of different challenges and some complexities. So yeah, let's uncover the best practices that can guide us through this complex terrain. So in terms of ETL is like an ideal scenario where like data needs to be refined and cleansed before analysis. Like it kind of provides like a structured approach that ensures like data's quality is maintained before loading, and making analysis process more smoother and more reliable. Whereas on the other hand, like ELT is more like the flip side. So we can load data mostly into like the data sources or warehouses, and then the transformation layer kicks in after once it's the process is loaded or data is loaded into the data warehouse. Andre, what's your thought
Yeah,
on that?
I would like actually want to add here that these two approaches is more or less about the same. The defining goal here is just putting data in a data warehouse in a final table. That's basically it. But the devils comes with the details, and details here is where to perform where to perform transformations, and transformation can be done before load or after load, and there is no like competition between those two approaches. Both of them applicable, both of them are working fine for most of cases, but you need to understand that in some cases ELT works best, in some cases ETL works best. ELT have some advantages in terms of easiness of use. Usually it's easier to build the ELT pipeline because you have just one source of data, it's your warehouse, and you don't need to manage a lot of them. ETL comes with their own pros, which is flexibility, because you can do pretty much anything with this transformation. Is basically your code. But as a downside for the ETL pipeline, usually it's much more complicated and requires some deeper knowledge of underlying technology, and sometimes it requires a lot of code because these transformations is usually done by some third-party code.
Yeah, but ultimately in both cases, ETL and ELT, the ultimate goal kind of remains the same, right? Because it's mostly
Yes,
like collecting from
we just
different
set a table.
sources and then put it in like end source. On top
Yeah.
of it, it's analysis or building dashboard. But achieving that goal can differ depending on like different factors like data volume or like what is the type of analytical use case that they have, having said that, let's move on to the next one, like to understand like what are the common mistakes or pitfalls in like building this ELT and ETL pipelines. So like in general, in within any data ecosystem, data pipeline forms like a backbone for a data ecosystem. It's like common to have like various challenges during its implementation, and understanding this common pitfalls and mistakes can help you navigate through this successful data integration pipeline. So having said that, it's very crucial because all this data pipeline, it starts with like source. So there is always a lack of understanding of source data. Like think of like a data source as a puzzle. So without understanding each piece, so you cannot, you kind of risk building this complete puzzle without understanding like what each of this piece does. So failing to know all the sources can lead to like downstream like inaccuracies, and later you realize like okay, something has went wrong, and then we go back to source and reiterate. And I think this also has some points related to the historical data, right?
Yeah, the historical data is usually the people, when they building a data pipelines, they usually take the current state of a system, current state of the world, and just move this current state to the data warehouse and building data pipeline according to it. But usually the system is evolving, and historical data usually can be stored a bit different. And having this historical data absence in your target database, in your data warehouse, usually leads to a lack of connectivity between the time. You don't have a rich and a deep understanding of your business if you don't have a historical data. And having this historical data is essential. And sometimes it requires more efforts, and people just try to avoid this effort because historical data usually lies in the different databases, in the different systems, because system evolve from a time. And usually it's still needed to be presented in a data warehouse. So you should still get in touch with your historical data. And actually understanding historical data is very crucial for understanding the whole domain model and the whole outline of your applications, I would say. So understanding what is your data model and where does it come from and different sources, it's essential for building a robust data pipeline, because this is a foundation for you.
Yeah, that's true. Like instead of like immediately jumping onto the business use case, okay, I want to build some data pipeline. I want to build some analytics. Instead of just jumping onto it, but it's good. Like we need to understand, like, okay, do we have enough data source if we wanted to, so that we can analyze some if the use case is more like pattern recognition or making sure like we have enough back data for it, or if not, we need to start that process as early to build pipelines to start collecting those data. And speaking of which, I think that's where this profiling comes in, right? Because making sure like to understand like what is the source data, and also not spending too much time, it's quite contradiction, but it's not like spending more time on extraction, but rather than, as you mentioned, like it's mostly to focus on the business value, like what is the end result of building this data.
Yeah, and I would say here is important is about everything is about balance. You need to understand your business, you need to understand your data, and you don't need to dig too much into it. Another thing that usually people come to a problem with in the later stages is putting too much effort into testing your data, because building a data pipeline in a modern world usually connected with a fast evolving business, and your business is not a static one, usually one. You have evolving company, evolving IT system under the hood, and you don't control this IT system. And usually you have profiling your data. You can do some testing to verify that your basic foundation is still in place, but putting too much into it basically can lead to the flaky pipeline, which is always failed, but not because your code is bad, not because your pipeline is bad, but because of under system on top of which you build your pipeline is changed somehow. It's okay for such a system. You need to expect these changes over time, and building your data pipeline on top of this knowledge. So putting too much effort into testing is not good, but also it's not good is putting no effort into testing. So there should be a balance. some testing still should be in place, but not all test cases, all 100% code coverage, something like this. You need to balance here.
Yeah, and also it's also like within the inter team, like within organization, there are like multiple teams sitting across, and each is responsible for the different data sources. So making sure like there's an agreement on the data rules. Like, okay, we have this type of certain set of data. I want to have a specific mapping, and to have this agreement on data rule is also common mistakes or pitfall, and later realize like it could have a lot of ripple effects on the downstream to making sure that it is synced across different team. And having said that, it's also important to go back and see what went wrong. So that's why I think the monitoring and logging, it's very, very crucial part of our data pipeline.
I would say that all these three last pitfalls are kind of sit together. First of all, agreeing on the rules in organization is important because sometimes development teams in your peer-dependent developer teams that you actually work with don't understand how crucial some specific data in the database that they work with is important to you. So having this agreed on is important for building a reliable pipeline. Another thing that you need to monitor them. Of course, you can just simply agree that everything would work fine, but without monitoring, you can silently break your pipeline, and which will lead not to just broken dashboard, but incorrect one, which is much worse. Because if it's broken, it's broken. It's not working, so no decision can be made on top of this data. But if it's corrupted, it's much worse. And this is where you need to agree on rules about certain data which is important for your pipeline, and logging and monitoring for this specific data in your data pipeline. So some crucial information should be monitoring. Another thing that usually people don't understand, that pipeline usually is not a static thing. It's live inside of a wild world, and this wild world usually want to broke this pipeline, and you need to monitor it and sometimes fix it, of course. So having a robust monitoring here is a crucial thing for execution of this pipeline.
Yeah. So having said that, so here are some of the best practices. So in general, like if you take a building a data pipeline, it kind of segregates into two phases. Like one is the preparation phase, another one is like the build phase. So during preparation phase is where like we have this defining the scope, making sure that source and targets are like configured, and making sure like it's compatible. And also the last piece is the data transformation. So the first thing is like scope. So the clarity is really the key. So before like building this data pipeline, it's essential to have like very clear understanding of data sources and what is the business objectives. So so it's always to kind of know like, okay, we are going to pick these many sources A, B, C, and making sure like, okay, it kind of reflects upon the business value that we wanted to get, or some data insights that we want to get, and making sure like those ABCs are compatible with, like, say, the targets, and making sure like how to make sure like the specific fields that we need is already mapped. And if there's something additionally, that's where this transformation comes in, like to making sure like it's customizable, or how flexible is it, right, Andre? And what's your thought on like
I
source?
think another thing that you should always keep in mind is requirements for your data pipeline and for your actual data, because the final goal of any data pipeline is having a table in a data warehouse or any database that you will define as a target for you, and defining the business and non-business requirement is essential here. Because based on this, you can choose a technology approach, or maybe even like the whole mindset of your data pipeline. For example, if you have requirements for fast analytics with a delay of data like in a matter of seconds, you're very limited on the tools that you can actually use. You only can use actual replication, a CDC, or something streaming, but it's usually come with a price. It's a bit harder to maintain. It's a bit harder technology to understand how it works, but it will give you a smaller delay on the end at the end of your pipeline. but in some cases it's not necessary. For example, you have a static data or more or less static data that it's updated not so frequent. In this case, it's maybe easier to create a simple pipeline that just copy data once in a while, and this will simplify everything. So understanding non-technical requirements to it also is crucial, especially if you're building a larger like data mart, for example. If you're building a huge storage for all necessary data for you, you need to understand all pieces. They have usually different requirements. Some of them need to be fresher, some of them need to be more precise, some of them need to be static as hell. So let's don't forget about these requirements before building a pipeline. Once you have figured it out, once you document all of your business and non-business requirements, you can actually start to building things.
And also it later helps in terms of picking the specific tools, right? Because this,
Exactly.
if we, once we have this preparation is set, we kind of know, okay, what is the type of stream? Do you want a real-time analytics, or do you want a batch processing? And does this particular sources is compatible, or like what is the type of source target that you want to do? Do you want to do a faster analytics, or do you just want to like a transaction database? We just dump it in data lake, or so once we kind of have this is also kind of this is a starting point where it helps the organizations to pick like what is it specific tools for all these components. Like for example, for transformations, maybe they want something specific needs in SQL transformation or something else. So I think that's very key also to understand what type of transformation the business is needing or specific use case.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing that need to keep in mind that making your pipeline simple is essential for making it robust. If it's simple, then it's nothing can broken it. So by defining those requirements, you actually can simplify your lives afterwards. Some technology can be not used because there is no need for them, and some of them you can actually pick only necessary things, and this will help you to build a precise tool for your data pipeline. Another thing that it's actually help you not build a starship out of the first day, because these starships usually need a very good foundation, and it's better to build a starship step by step by increasing complexity of your data analytical platform, not building it from scratch, because building it from scratch can actually lead to problems with direction of your data platform and your business. Because if your data platform bigger is in your business, then it's actually not business run your data, rather than data run your business. So keep in mind all this, try to simplify things. Simple means efficient and actually maintainable.
Yeah. And having said that, that's where the preparation piece is over. And now let's talk about the build phase. This is more crucial. Now that we kind of have this preparation set, like these are the type of analyzing the source, what does the transformation need? It's more about like in the build phase, it's like, okay, it's just looking into how can we manage this pipeline. It's more like, okay, does this have like an error handling? Like how can we have this how can we collect these logs, and does it have like monitoring? Can we just go back, retrace any specific error which went wrong, and then fix it? Because that's very crucial, right? Because the data pipeline for moving of data from point A to point B, it's more crucial to have this data integrity. Like if something goes wrong or something, we need to be able to retrace it back. So without the help of having a proper robust error handling and monitoring techniques, it's really not possible. And having said that, about like the other points is about like security as well. Like for each organization, they will have like different own security compliance, like for example GDPR or some other security best practices, even in the building the pipelines. So it's useful to have this all informations prepared well beforehand, making sure like, okay, if you wanted to have your organization have, for example, a GDPR compliance, make sure like all the data that you're centrally storing has this capabilities of masking certain columns or something like a basic PI deduction or something like that. Yeah.
I would say that these requirements actually affect your build phase a lot. And when you're building things. You need to keep this in mind. Another thing that you have be ready for is error handling and monitoring. It should be your mindset as an owner of a pipeline. In some cases, it's even worse to make a shifted duty with this error handling. So there is always a person who take a look on the monitoring, who take a look on the errors and fix them as fast as possible if you have such requirements. So it's very crucial to have this mindset for engineers, for data engineers, that error handling, monitoring, and security should be first in mind.
Yeah, and also like imagining a pipeline as a living entity, because as and when the volume surges, the data volume surges, your pipeline should also expand seamlessly to meet the demand, right? So to making sure, like, do you want to compromise the performance, or like do you want more storage or compute? So scalability is also really key. So you need to look ahead on your data needs, to making sure you plan ahead, and how easy is it like to scale, like because as an organization grows, definitely the needs and volume of the data needs and analytics needs increase. So we need to make sure like all this is taken into consideration, how we can optimize the pipeline over the time and things like that.
Another thing that regards to scalability and performance, usually right now and nowadays, it's not so crucial because modern tools actually come with a cloud-based, cloud-native resources out of the box. So if you have right tool for your pipelines, usually it's not a big deal to scale them up. So choosing the right tool, need to be just aware of this requirement. In some cases, those scalability issue can be a bottleneck. If you choose a wrong tool for your data platform at the beginning, it can be fine for first several iterations, but once your business overgrow this tool, you have to like redo your whole pipelines, and this sometimes can be painful. So if you have an ability to choose a tool with scalability as a feature in it, let's consider this because it's important for later growth. But such tools usually is elastic one. So at the early stages, they don't scale much because you don't need this. And the later stage, you can scale up just by putting more compute power here.
Yeah, that's completely that's something I agree, because it takes a lot of effort to build it, and then later you realize like, okay, this is not going to work
We
out.
need to rebuild it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of a pain. So yeah, moving ahead, just to summarize what we talked about, it's mostly like first thing is more important on the scope. So making sure like we understand like the scope of the data sources and building the entire pipeline. What is the thing that you want to build out of this pipeline? Is it mostly for batch processing, or you want to have like faster real-time analytics, or you wanted to build some actionable insights out of it by building some dashboards, which again needs like faster query speeds and stuff like that, right? And the second thing is making sure that you plan long term and to keep in consideration on
And you
like
have a
maintenance factor. Yeah.
and you have a team in mind about the maintenance. So you need to understand that just a building pipeline is not enough. You need build and maintain it because it's a evolving process.
Yeah. So guys, meanwhile, if you have any other questions or anything, please feel free to put it in chat, and we'll
Yeah.
be happy to answer them in a couple of slides. And also the other one it's very important is like security, like because it's really with the recent data breaches happening, and also making sure like your environment is foolproof. Like, do you have any VPC? And we wanted to make sure like data is processed within your own data ecosystem, and you don't want to leave it within your cross region. So those are like really crucial and more important, like to make sure that is there. So we need to have like strong monitoring and logging capabilities. If something
Yeah.
goes wrong, it's easy to trace back.
Yeah,
So
for logging, it's for monitoring and logging is essential. For actual long-term maintenance, without logging and monitoring tooling, you can't maintain your pipeline. You are like a blind cat in a room. You have nothing to see. You can actually just observe that something is going on, but you don't understand what exactly. Without monitoring and logging, uh, everything will be broken in a couple of weeks. Usually you have like a time frame in a couple of weeks to work in ETL pipeline, and then it will be broken. And without monitoring and logging, usually you don't even notice it.
yeah, that's true. So and also last point is mostly on like the scalability. So look ahead, foresee your kind of data needs and plan your workload accordingly. You can start small, but eventually your business grows along with you. So in that case, you need to plan your workload and make sure that the tooling has this capability of scaling and also making sure like it's scalable and for whatever needs that's needed. So having said that, so why are we here? What are we talking
Yeah.
about? So DoubleCloud. So what is DoubleCloud? So we have seen this all previous pitfalls, challenges, and some best practices. So we kind of put it in a place. We ourselves within our organization have this lot of pain points, and we try to find them and kind of build this specific data platform tool, so which kind of helps it. So we have a couple of services, like one of them is a DoubleCloud transfer service, which is useful and it's a managed
Yeah.
data pipeline. Sandra, you can
Yeah,
share more about it.
I can say a couple words about DoubleCloud Transfer. DoubleCloud Transfer is a basically extract load transfer tool that helps you to build the data pipelines. And what we do when we build this transfer tool, what we keep in mind is three key points: is like multi-purpose tool. So you can build either a batching pipelines and a streaming pipelines, because both of these approaches are needed, and we try to combine them in one tool, so you don't need to switch between tools for batching and streaming analytics, batching and streaming pipelines. Another thing that we have in mind is the security. In nowadays world, having your pipeline delivered by some third-party applications somewhere on the internet, and not always a reliable thing. So we have everything. Try to put everything as much secure as possible in your own VPC, in your own account, for even inside your account, so you will see everything. It's everything under your control, but by the mean of security. But in terms of maintainability, we provide a comprehensive set of tools for logging and monitoring that help you to actually observe what happens inside of this pipeline and building a robust alerts for you, so you can actually maintain these pipelines quite easily. And another thing that we actually thinking about transfer when we build everything is being a cloud agnostic, because in modern world we have multiple cloud vendors. All these cloud vendors have their own like pros and cons, and some customers wanted to stick to like AWS, one with GCP, and we try to build everything with a cloud agnostic in our heads, and that's actually allows to build this transfer as a reliable and quite easy to use tool to build a pipeline.
And not just about DoubleCloud is not just about transfer. So we also have other things built around it. So it's mostly like we have the managed data store, like we have a ClickHouse, which is one of the most fastest data warehouse for the analytical purpose. We can run your queries in a lightning speed. And also the Kafka, which is also we have managed Kafka. We can build streaming pipelines using Kafka. And so we kind of have this pieces, like we have this transfer service which just collects data from different sources. We have managed data stores where you can just put those data into those managed data stores, and ultimately at the end we also have a free visualization tool which you can just build visualizations on top of the data which is aggregated. So you can think of it like an end-to-end data platform that is built on an open data tools actually. So yeah, you feel free to have a look at our websites, and if you have any other questions, here is our Slack channel, and also you can join our LinkedIn page and you can reach out to any one of us to ask some questions. So yeah, now we are open to any questions. Let's see if we have any other questions coming up in the chat. Let's see. Yeah, I see there's one question. So we are a small company. How can we start with building data pipeline?
Okay, I can start answering this question. So first of all, the first step you need to understand with your data pipeline is understanding the need of your data pipeline, why you actually need this. I would say that building this in a small steps, small pieces is very good for starting. For example, you can start by simply absorbing your data inside of your existing storages without any pipeline. If you understand, this will give you some understanding of your model, of your needs. Like, for example, you will understand what actually you can consume from this data. Once you have this understanding, you can go to the next stage of building a simple copy style data warehouse. Most of companies, first step for data pipelining is just simply copy your existing data into data warehouse without any order, without any structure. It actually helps you to experiment. Once you have this data in a place without worrying about performance and actually broken your production, you can freely experiment with your data, playing with it a little bit, and start building something. This will give you some better understanding of your domain model, of your existing data, of what you actually have in your hands, and then you can actually try to improve it as a next step. Maybe you will understand the hot passes of your data, what is should be freshest data. Then you can, on top of this data, you can build a reliable like replication pipeline, streaming pipeline, and having this streaming pipeline enable you to build a data mart with up-to-date data. And after this, you can actually try to work with your existing data in a data warehouse, because data warehouse is simply aggregator of anything that you have in your account, in your business, and this will give a lot of data for transforming it in a very nice dashboards, nice analytics. So I would say answering your question, start small, think about business, and evolve it step by step.
Yeah, that's true, because it can always evolve over the period of time. So it's mainly thing is like you can just start building with tools and for different for ETL purpose. It's easy nowadays just to pick it up and pick your sources, and it makes it easy. I see another question related to that. I think there are different ETL tools. How can we pick the best one? This is interesting question. It's mostly like there are different factors that you can take into consideration when actually like you're picking the specific tools. Like for example, like you need to make sure like it is secure, and also making sure like does it have bring your own accounts is mostly important. Like you have your own accounts in AWS or a GCP, making sure like it's there, and also what are the type of sources and how reliable is it, and also to add to that, like how can you scale it. So those kind of factors really kick in when you kind of choose. Andre, you have something. It's your.
I have something in my mind. We always can just advertise our service because our service surely is the best. But apart from this, I would say try to find a nice tool for you, and this nice tool just need to fit in your requirements. For sure, in most of organizations, they have a lot of like security requirements, compliant things. But if you don't have this, you have a wider variety of tools. In modern world, the ETL tools can be like closed sourced, proprietary, SaaS based. You can actually choose something open source, unmanaged one, so you can actually open it and build it on your own. But just keep in mind that actually choosing a toolkit is not necessarily means you will stick to this forever. And in some cases, in most of cases, actually, you can actually use several tools for different needs. We actually try to combine these tools all together in a single place, so you don't need to actually thinking about it and worrying about it. But if you choose, you can actually choose a lot of variety here.
Yeah. Okay. I see another question. How much time does it take for any organizations to plan and build pipelines from scratch?
Okay,
You want to take it, Andre?
I actually can say that usually we already discussed about it in the previous slides. Like we have two phases. It's logical separation, like preparation, execution. And usually a preparation can take a long time. You're like thinking about it, you're discussing with your peers, but actual execution in nowadays is not so, it's not so long. in modern tools, you actually just need to like click and in UI sometimes some pipeline, like building it from a scratch can take like couple hours or days, nothing more. And if you have this understanding, building a pipeline is a matter of hours or days, nothing more.
Okay, so if there is no more questions, so here are ways you can just get in touch with us. So you can use the contact us form, fill in your use cases, any pain points that you face within your data ecosystem, transfers, or any analytical specific needs. Please feel free. And here's our ebooks that we recently published about the data transfer as a service. So yeah, you can read about it, and also let us know if you have any other issues related to uh, transfer service or anything else. Okay, so I think we can end this slide then.
I think we can wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you all for joining, and
Thank
see
you.
you on another webinar. Bye bye.
See you. Bye bye.